Hey everyone, thanks for joining me again, and today we'll be looking at another headphone amplifier. Today we have the xDuoo TA26S, which is a tube-based headphone amplifier as well as a line level preamplifier. And this unit is on loan from Apos Audio, so I'd like to thank them for sending it over for review. This unit's been around for about a year now, and it comes in at $319. Let's start off by looking at the build quality. It's a super solid unit, very heavy. The finish on it is a dark gunmetal with a little bit of specularity to it, so a little bit of shine, which I think is really appealing. You have a large power transformer, but this unit uses no output transformers. The front tube does your preamplification, and the second tube is your buffer. On the front faceplate, you'll find the headphone jacks, and you have one 4.4 millimeter, but it's non-balanced, it's strictly there for convenience, and next to that, the 6.35 millimeter. This unit also came with a 3.5 millimeter adapter to 6.35. And then finally, our volume knob. And I have to say that I love the smoothness of this knob. It's a joy to turn. I only wish it had slightly more resistance, but it's super smooth. It just begs to be turned. And I really dig the contrasting red color. On the sides, you have plenty of ventilation. This unit does get hot to the touch and does not come with any cage for the tubes, so you'll want to keep an eye on small children and pets when they're close to this unit. On the back side, we have a couple of RCAs, which are oddly labeled aux in and aux out. The aux in is your line level in, and the aux out is your pre-level out. You'd plug in a DAC or a phono pre into the aux in, and you'd plug in a power amplifier to the aux out. Then we have our IEC inlet and our power rocker. The previous model to the TA26S was the TA26, and that unit, instead of having the 4.4 millimeter, had a power switch on the front. I personally would have preferred that, as you don't want to leave tube gear on all night. You want to turn them off at the end of your listening session to conserve the tubes as well as conserve power. But having the power switch on the backside isn't a deal breaker for me. I personally wouldn't put this unit in a cabinet or somewhere where it would be covered, because I definitely want to have a lot of airflow around it. So on desktop situations or on a countertop, it's super easy to reach over and switch it on. So not a problem for me. If you were to put this in a cabinet, I can see how it'd be difficult, but again, you want ventilation, so I would suggest against that. As for aesthetics, those are always subjective, but I think this is a beautiful unit with a nice blend of modern and retro. I had this unit set up on my entertainment system, and my partner came in, and the first thing she said is, "Wow, that's a beautiful looking piece." She didn't know what it was, but she loved the look of it. It's definitely an eye catcher and will grab attention. Now we'll jump into sound quality. The first thing I'd like to tell you before giving you my impression of the sound is that this is a review sample, which means I don't know how many hours of use these tubes have gone through. After time, vacuum tubes do degrade and the sound quality will be diminished. So please consider that when listening to my impressions. I didn't have any of these specific tubes to say, hey, I tried it with this tube knowing how many hours are on that tube. So today we're going blind as to knowing how old these guys are. To my ear, the characteristics of the preamp and the headphone amp are the same to me. Super neutral, very clean. The bass has a very slight warmness. The mid-range slightly forward, and the highs a very slight softness. It's a really interesting unit in that it's not a very tubey preamp at all. To me, the main characteristics that I listen for when listening to a tube device is going to be the sound stage. I'm listening for that bloom where things grow, things get larger, the three-dimensional image around you. Not necessarily the warmth or the softness. In that aspect, it's almost solid state sounding. Now that very well may be the same with a set of fresh tubes or different tubes. But as tested this week, I can say that the changes that I heard between this preamp and a solid state preamp were very slight. The kind of changes that you might get when you're flipping through filters on a DAC. So while it does have those three characteristics of having a little bit warmer bass, a slightly forward mid-range, and slightly soft highs, I wouldn't say they're large changes at all. Flipping back and forth, I can hear the difference, but if I were to have walked into the room and one of these was playing, I probably couldn't tell you which one it was, which is not the case with other tube gear where you instantly feel the holographic image wrap around you, like on the Dayton Audio HTA 200 and the Knobsound AV525 tube preamps. On those two, you definitely get that holographic image as the first thing that comes out at you. That being said, this is an awesome unit for what it brings to the table. The headphone output is plenty powerful. I was comparing it to my DOAC U8 DAC and headphone amp. That one outputs 150 milliwatts, while this one outputs 500 milliwatts. So you're getting a little bit under double the volume output with this unit here. I tested this unit in two ways, using the headphone output and using the line level output to my amp and speakers. The sound characteristics were the same. Very pleasant, plenty of detail. Of course, slightly less detail than when not through the tubes, but plenty nonetheless. Tonality is very transparent, very similar to the DACs output. My favorite use for the TA26S wasn't necessarily as a headphone amplifier. My DACs 8 has enough power for my headphones at 150 milliwatts. I don't need any more power. I'm usually listening to around 70% volume there. While this one can get substantially louder, I just don't need that power for myself. And truthfully, if I needed more power, I jump straight up to the topping A70 Pro. That unit brings a lot more power to the table, as well as a beautiful encoder with a step relay attenuation and an awesome screen for about 80 bucks more. And much more versatility on that preamp headphone amp combo, as it has more line inputs as well as remote control. But the use scenario that I really liked was using this unit as an analog preamp in an all analog setup. I connected the TA26S to my Cambridge Audio Alva ST turntable and the pre-outs to my Shit Wrecker 2 watt per channel Class A amplifier. That paired with my 92 dB speakers made for an awesome sound. Now I wouldn't recommend that little wrecker if you had lower sensitivity speakers. I also tested that combo with the Yamahas that I upgraded recently, and that definitely didn't work. The Iota VX power amp is much better suited for those speakers. But back to this unit. What I really loved about that setup is that I can have this preamp next to the turntable, and as you have to get up to switch an album, there's no trouble to get up and adjust the volume as well for that old school engaging feeling that you're getting up and you're doing something. So you get up, you switch the album, you set your needle, bring it down, adjust your volume, and every time you put your hand on this knob, it's a pleasure. You take a look at the beautiful glowing tubes and go back to your sitting area for a seat. So my final thought is, this is a unique piece. It brings something different to the table. The aesthetics are very different, which I personally do love. The sound quality, while not being tubey per se, is super solid, and the output is very close to the input. If you need a remote control, this unit is definitely not for you. But if you're using it at your desktop, you're gonna love having your hand on this knob because it's just a pleasure. At $319, I call it a solid buy. It's definitely a showpiece. Next, I have some audio samples of the signal coming out of the headphone section of the TA26S versus the signal coming out of the headphone amp on the DACs 8 DAC. That DAC at $300. I would definitely say there's more value there, as not only are you getting a headphone amplifier plus a DAC, whereas this unit has much more power. Listen to the samples and let me know what you think, and I'll see everybody on the next one. Thanks for watching. First thing is we will do a 1 kilohertz tone. That is the TA26S. That is straight from the DAC. TA26X, straight from the DAC. Matching here, matching there. Now let's play some royalty-free music.